Chairman Brown, members of the committee. Multi-employer pension plans are private economy arrangements between firms and labor unions. Employees earn benefits through their years of work, employers make contributions according to plan rules, and the trustees of the pension plan have a fiduciary responsibility to steward the plan in the interests of the beneficiaries. Something has gone terribly wrong, and I believe much of it can be traced back to the systematic mismeasurement by plans of the costs of delivering on pension promises. If the PBGC is going to guarantee multi-employer pensions, but trustees are not going to naturally operate in a way that ensures the solvency of plans, then Congress must impose strong rules-based requirements that plans measure liabilities according to sound financial principles and remedy underfunding swiftly. Let me illustrate the fundamental measurement problem. Suppose a plan owes an employee an amount of money in 10 years, say $50,000, and suppose the system has just $25,000 in assets today. What actuarial funding ratio will the typical plan report? A funding ratio of just slightly over 100%. You see, if a participating employer had contributed just $25,000 towards this promise, that employer could in many cases withdraw from the multi-employer plan without further obligation, and without the plan having any recourse to that employer if the investment returns do not meet their target. Basing decisions on expected returns while ignoring risk is imprudent, and the fact that the stock market has earned high historical returns does not justify it. Past returns are not a guarantee of future performance, and there's no sense in which just waiting long enough will bail you out. This logic also shows that a loan program is not what is needed. The loan program proposals seem to be based on the idea that if the plans can get a low-interest loan from the government and then invest the proceeds in risky assets and hopefully earn a high return, then the loan can be repaid in full and somehow free money has been created. A loan program would simply be doubling down on these kinds of investment problems. It should have been clear long ago to trustees that minimum funding requirements were insufficient. Trustees had years to take other measures other than trying to force participants to take benefit cuts. Trustees have always had the right to gradually require greater contributions from participating employers, to make more reasonable assumptions about expected returns, and to make more realistic benefit promises on a prospective basis. Despite funding improvement plans, we have not seen much improvement. Plan trustees have done too little until it was too late. So when is a multi-employer plan making sufficient contributions? Well, one standard would be treading water, meaning the unfunded liability isn't getting larger. Another would be actually paying your normal costs plus paying down unfunded liabilities. And under the actuarial measurement standard used by multi-employer plans, most of them are contributing at least enough to pay down this unfunded liability. But I calculate that under much more appropriate solvency standards based on the Treasury yield curve, that the picture looks quite different. Only 1.4% of plans are contributing the cost of new benefits plus a 30-year amortization of unfunded liabilities, and only 17% are treading water. I think a very good comparison point is the single employer defined benefit pension system in the U.S., which is not in great shape, but it's in much better shape than either the multi-employer space or the public plan space. And that's largely a function of the contribution requirements that have existed historically. The legislation surrounding the single employer system has adhered to a key principle. If a plan cannot or does not make required contributions, the sponsor must face an excise tax or terminate the plan. Plans should not get to just promise more benefits with a PBGC and hence potentially taxpayer backstop when they're not prudently funding their existing promises. And as you know, Congress abandoned that basic principle for critical red zone plans in 2006, presumably because it felt that those funding rules were too burdensome, but this just kicks the can down the road. So my written testimony shows that to meet a rigorous funding standard, contributions would have to rise very substantially. Nonetheless, over time, we must approach this standard for all plans. And once phased in, all plans that do not follow funding rules should be subject to an excise tax. And ultimately, if the plan does not meet required contributions, there should be an automatic termination. Furthermore, to address the incentive that this could provide for more employers to withdraw, Congress should immediately act to change the withdrawal liability calculation to also reflect the true value of unfunded liabilities. I'd just like to end by pointing out that Congress should consider carefully the impact on incentives that a loan program or bailout of the multi-employer system would have. And by the way, a loan program is a form of bailout. And by incentives, I mean not only those of multi-employer plans to take risk, but also the moral hazard that bailouts might create for a host of other agents in the economy who might come before Congress to ask for assistance, either because they lost money in their own investments or generally because private parties made flawed arrangements or trustees did not perform their fiduciary duties. And I think first and foremost among them are the state and local pension systems out there who on their own accounts, using discount rates of 7%, have $1.7 trillion of unfunded liabilities, but on a solvency standard, they're actually $4 trillion underfunded. This is the same set of issues that we're seeing in the multi-employer system. And the stronger the belief by the state and local governments that the federal government will bail them out, the less discipline they're going to choose to impose upon themselves for these problems, to address these problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you.